right, people. So the topic of the day is what's in my bear can and how does it fit? I feel like this is always something that new people have questions about. Oh my God, how am I going to fit enough food to get from Mount Whitney to MTR or from MTR to Mount Whitney? It's not as bad as you think. It might take some compromises. It depends on your schedule. Trust me, it is tremendously doable. To illustrate my point, this is a Bear Boxer Contender. It's their Model 101. It's 275 cubic inches. This is the smallest Yosemite approved bear can. And believe it or not, this has 3 days of food and all of my smells for a weekend trip in it. If you take into account the fact that I can have another day outside of my bear can as long as I eat all of the food before I go to sleep the first night, that means I could take this out for 4 days. If you're an idiot like me, you could probably go all the way from Mount Whitney to MTR with this. But more sensible people are going to take a little bit longer. So what we're going to do is look at what I'm bringing, how I'm bringing it, and then scale it up to a Bear Vault 500, which as a 650 cubic inch can is much more akin to what most people are going to bring. And it can also take more food than you might realize if you pack it like this. If we do the math, a Bear Vault 500 is 2 1/3 times the volume of this, which give you 7 + 1 days or 8 days total. My experience is that the larger shape of the Bear Vault 500 is much more packable than this little tiny thing. The extra days, I'm not going to carry that much more in terms of additional smellables like poop kit stuff or little things like sunscreen and things like that. What I'm actually able to take in a Bear Vault 500 ends up being closer to 10 days. It's not easy though, so we'll go through what I have in here, talk about some of the choices that I make just for, honesty's sake. We'll also talk about the non-food stuff and some changes that might be necessary there. So let's dig in. Note about bear cans. This guy, the Garcia, and the Counter Assault all require that you have some sort of a tool like this. The Wild Ideas ones also require this. So you need some sort of a tool. This is a little Swiss Army knife. It's not that big of a deal. It is an extra inconvenience. That's part of why my other bear cans are the Bear Vault 500 and the Bear Vault 450. In addition to the fact that those are made out of a see-through plastic, which makes it a little bit easier to find things than in something like this. So that's just something to keep in mind. I know that Lighter One also does the same thing. I wouldn't mind using their Big Daddy for the JMT or something like that if I were going to go fishing. The extra cost is justified in my mind because I get a frying pan in the deal, and if I'm fishing, I need a frying pan. If I'm not fishing though, I'm just going to use a mug and it's not worth it. I think our first topic is going to be this stuff. So this is my poop kit and my little things for a weekend trip. If you compare this to what I would take for a longer trip, you're gonna realize that I'm gonna take more, but it's not gonna be that much more. If you're using a larger bear can and going for more days, you're gonna use a smaller percentage of your bear can with this kind of stuff. And that's the last we need to talk about. These things, we'll get them out of the way. If you have questions about that stuff, I would refer you to my videos done on my poop kit and on my little things kit. I think that they're great videos that can help you understand everything that's involved in those kits, as well as how to kind of minimize them and still have a really solid kit. I do need to redo the poop kit video at some point. I didn't emphasize the need to follow leave no trace while disposing of soap, but just know that soap is poop. Only use it when you're able to bury it well away from water. So let's dig into the can and just pull everything out, and then we'll talk about what we have when we get there. Okay, can's empty. Let's start talking. What I have in the can falls into a few categories. I've got snacky things, and I usually have about 2 solid snacks a day. They're protein and fat heavy. Most of my calories during the day are going to come from sugary beverages. Gatorade, almost exclusively. I've got 2 types of Gatorade. I use the high endurance Gatorade, which looks like this. It's basically Gatorade with maltodextrin and 57 herbs and spices. One note about the high endurance flavors is they're not the same as the other ones, even if they have the same name. For example, the orange high endurance tastes very different from the orange Gatorade. Just keep that in mind. Then these other ones that say, LL plus, I've got 2 varieties of those. One is like this. It says, 70p 30m. And what that means is there are 0.7 ounces of punch Gatorade, and then there's 0.3 ounces of maltodextrin. Maltodextrin adds calories without adding sweetness. You're consuming a lot of sugar during the day. The sweetness can be a little bit overwhelming. You feel better when you get the sugar because your brain needs sugar and your muscles need sugar, and there's there's a very limited amount of sugar to go around. So the amount of sugar that you can add by consuming it directly makes a big difference in how you feel. It just makes a lot more sugar available to your muscles and your brain so they'll be able to move faster for longer and you won't get that headache at the end of the day. The other one I have here is lemon lime plus maltodextrin plus fructose. Fructose is just another sugar you can add. So there are different pathways for glucose and for fructose in your gut. I'm not going to get too far into it. Maltodextrin is effectively a long chain of glucose, and fructose has a different pathway, so you want to make sure that you maintain a balance between glucose and fructose. Sucrose is a mixture of glucose and fructose already, so oftentimes I don't bother getting more complex than that, but just know there's a bunch of stuff you can get in if you want to go down that rabbit hole. Anyway, making sure that you're getting enough sugar is more important than having specific ratios, or don't worry about it. Just know to have Gatorade. You need the salt, you need the sugar, it'll make you feel better. And that's actually a good note on food overall. Salt is key. If you're not getting enough salt, you're going to get cramping. Your actual salt needs while you're up there are typically going to be more than they would be at home. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a foodist. I don't know how these things work exactly, but I can tell you that you need more because you're sweating a lot more. As for how much more, if you're a normal healthy person, make sure you're on the high end of your daily allowance. If your shirt's really salty at the end of the day, maybe you need more than that. If you're sensitive to salt or there are any sort of dietary issues, then just do what your doctor tells you to do if there's any potential risk involved. Again, I'm not an expert. I'm not a dietologist. Whatever works for you is going to work for you, and I'm just trying to share what I do, and while I give advice in sort of general terms, I'm not doing it from a medical perspective. Anyway, that aside, salt is important, sugar is important. Speaking of salty, dinners. I like to go to the Mountain House meals. They have a fairly good mixture of stuff, but I doctor them up. When I have such a skewed diet in the day where I'm consuming a lot of sugar, I don't need as many carbs at night, and I try to focus on the fats and proteins that I'm not getting during the day. That's why what I do is I get one of these guys and I split it in half. I put each half in a separate baggie, and into that baggie I add an extra half cup of freeze-dried ground beef. Adds a lot more protein and some extra fat. Then I add even more fat with these guys, which are olive oil packets. I have tried just adding olive oil in with the rest of the Mountain House stuff, and as long as it's not sitting that way for too long, it's fine. If I were going to load things up at the beginning of a trip, I wouldn't think twice about just putting the oil in with the Mountain House meal. I store these things for a while sometimes, and I already had the olive oil packets from earlier experimenting, and that's why I do it this way. I've got 3 dinners here, and they're all a little bit different. This is the Mountain House Chili Mac. This is the Mountain House Stroganoff. Probably my favorite is the Mountain House Spaghetti, but the can wasn't big enough for all of them, and I wanted to show you this, which is a fantastic choice if you feel like you're definitely not getting enough protein in the backcountry. This is literally a cup and a half or something like that of freeze-dried ground beef with taco seasoning. Let me tell you, it's fantastic. It is so good. It's like having a steak at the end of the day. Just a ton of protein and a ton of fat. Usually I'll have an extra packet of olive oil or 2 in here just to bulk it up even more. Having all that protein at the end of the day is just really satisfying, and it helps get me closer to the amount of protein that I actually should be consuming on the sort of high exertion trips that I tend to do. Next, we can talk about breakfasts. So for breakfast, my go-to is 1/8 of a cup to 1/4 cup of Nido, which is the powdered whole milk, along with 3 to 4 ounces of granola. This is a fairly high-fat breakfast that helps get me through the day and gives me a good kick in the pants, but it doesn't require boiling water, which is the key. It allows me to just get up, pack everything up, throw this in my cup, and start eating while I walk so I can start generating body heat. I find that generating body heat is way better than sitting around a stove waiting for water to boil. With my breakfasts, I usually like to do some sort of emergency or airborne or something with a lot of vitamin C in it. I don't know if it's hocus pocus. I've read in a few places that you are under much higher oxidative stress when you're doing all the mountain stuff. Just because you're breathing so much, you're pumping more oxygen through your system. Vitamin C is a strong antioxidant. I like to pretend that it's helping me. I'm not sure if it does. If I'm pissing out a little extra vitamin C, it's not going to kill me. For desserts, I like to have a couple options. The first is spiced apple cider or hot chocolate. This is like the sweet option. If I can stand a little more sugar, this is the way to go. I also like to have a salty, savory option. If I feel like I'm not getting enough salt or I just can't stand anything sweet, I'm still getting a couple extra calories and have something to do with the water that I use to clean out my pot at the end of the day. I like the instant miso soup. You could do instant chicken soup or something like that, but I find that the flavor of these can really hit the spot if I'm just tired of sweet stuff. The last thing that I wanted to discuss are these, and these exact things, not important. I think these are lifesavers. I prefer lifesavers because they don't get the sharp edges that Jolly Ranchers get. Some people like the flavors of the Jolly Ranchers more. The key thing is to have little treats like this that you can fit in the open space in your bear can. When you pile all of these bigger bags together, they're just little gaps everywhere. And if you have calories that you can shove in those corners, it's just free calories. It's extra stuff that you can fit in the bear can. And when you're up there, maybe it sounds good. So it's a great way to just add some extra calories in that you're gonna enjoy. And this is really what I'd take for about 3 days. It's around 2,800 to 3,000 calories a day. I think that it's delicious. I especially love the dinners. If you steal no other ideas, steal the dinners. But let's take a minute to talk about how I get all of this to fit in the bear can. Some of these things don't really take up that much space anyway, so I don't worry about them. These sort of flat shapes tend to pack really well because you can just wedge them in around stuff. Real challenge for packing are these bigger items. Two important things with the bigger items is that they be kind of loose and packed in a way where you can squeeze out the air, so you're just dealing with the crumbles that are there. Now, since these crumbles are relatively large, you're still going to end up with a fair amount of air volume in there, and there's a certain amount of that you're just not going to be able to do anything about. However, if you're trying to get calories in there, breakfast and dinner are usually places where you can fit in extra fat without it making you sick during the day. Adding those calories as fats means that the comparable weight of your pack for a given number of calories is going to go down. Carbohydrates and proteins are about 100 calories in terms of just dry weight, but then fats are about 250. So you get a drastic increase in calories if you increase the fat that you have mixed into your foods. Something else that I do in addition to repacking my main meals, I pack these guys. There are a few reasons why I like to repackage my sugary beverages. First off, packets that you buy in the store only typically come in one size, and if that size isn't right for your water bottle, then you're just gonna have the wrong size. Second, as mentioned before, you can alter the mix of things that are in there, so you can, say, add more calories with maltodextrin without adding the extra sweetness, so you can make more calories a little bit more palatable. And third, you make the whole thing a little bit more compact, just because commercially packaged foods tend to incorporate air because they want the package to look bigger. They want you to feel like you're getting more. You're actually getting less in terms of what you want, if what you want is more compact food to go into your bear can. So that's a lot of why I repackage things. I know these markings look like gibberish, but so this is approximately 1 ounce of sugar in this, and I'll use this for the 23-ounce snap cap bottles. If I'm in a very hot climate and I need a higher percentage of water to sugar, I'll bump it back and do 0.6 or 0.7 of an ounce per 23-ounce water bottle. I'll also use these smaller ones in a half-liter water bottle when I'm running or something like that. So I have a few different sizes that I use for different water bottles and in different settings. I'll also throw in on the topic of beverages that there are a lot of things out there that aren't Gatorade that are still pretty good. This, for example, is something I've turned on to recently, horchata mix in a water bottle. No joke, try it. It's pretty good. It's also worth noting that you can repackage a lot of other things. Reasons why I will repackage are because I want to incorporate some air to help protect the things, like in this case, pretzels. Pretzels will turn into powder in your can if you don't protect them somehow. And if I throw a little bit of air into the packet, it helps me protect them from getting crushed quite as much as they otherwise might. These are peanut M&Ms. If you have had peanut M&Ms in your bear can, you'll understand that they add an extra weird sweet funk to everything. I like putting them into these Mylar packets because Mylar is relatively smell resistant. Not only will that reduce how attractive your bear can is to critters overall, but it will also keep that bear can funk from getting out of control because you'll be containing a lot of the smells with the foods that they're coming from. Another reason is things like this. These are gummy bears that are, I don't know how old, but they've been in this thing for ages, and they haven't picked up that sort of crusty, inedible nature yet. By the way, gummy bears are excellent, especially if you're new to incorporating sugar in your backpacking. They're made out of straight glucose syrup, so they're easy to absorb, and they will really brighten up your day if you don't have any other sugar. The one thing you should note, though, is when they do get warm, they have a tendency to turn into a giant blob. If you're hungry enough, it does not matter. So that wraps up most of what I want to talk about, but the last thing I wanted to do is shove everything into a Bear Vault 500 and squish it down so you can get an idea of how much volume this really takes up in that bear can, just in case anyone doubted me. Bear Vault 500, let's pack it in. These weren't in the original can, so I'm going to set those aside. Oh, also, Forgot to mention, if you can't handle sugary beverages, goos aren't bad. They're made out of essentially straight maltodextrin. Even though they feel liquidy, they don't actually have that much water in them. Sugars in general are about 100 calories per ounce. This is 1.1 ounces and it's 100 calories. It's not really an excess of water weight. There you go. It's a little bit hard to see on camera, but we're approximately a third of the volume with 3 meals. There's still some wasted space in the corners that we would be able to take advantage of if we were really cramming it in here. But the long and the short is you can get 10 days of food in here, no problem, at like 3,000 calories a day. So I know this is a little long-winded, but I wanted to give everyone just that little extra bit of faith that you're going to be able to fit your food in your bear can. If you're a little bit creative about the food that you choose, you repackage things to make them a little bit more dense, you might increase the caloric density with a little bit of oil, you can get enough food into one of these cans to last you for quite a while. So anyway, that's what I do. It works great. I can fit a lot of food in these bear cans, and consequently I end up using the smallest bear can that I can find. If I'm going out for a 2-day weekend, I'll even take this for both me and my dog. You can get a lot in these things if you are smart about how you pack stuff, you minimize the amount of non-food, and you repackage everything in a way to make it as compact as possible so you can take advantage of all the little corners that open up between the bigger meals to help you get the calories that you need to keep moving during the day. So thanks for watching, like and subscribe. If there's something else you want to go over, let me know. If you thought this was dumb, let me know. Whatever is good, put it in the comments. Otherwise, I'll just keep making stuff up and we'll go from there. Later.